press record, and off we go. So today, can everyone can see the screen that I'm actually scrolling, yeah, that says negotiate the deal? Perfect. Just moving you over to the other side so I can see the chat scrolling along. So the whole point of this, and excuse the voice, not sure what's going on there. One of those things you wake up in the morning and coughing and spluttering. So yeah, we're looking at Ignite session number 10, negotiate the deal. So this is kind of a key theme to the whole Keller Williams ethos, is that, you know, we're trying to do a win-win deal for everybody involved. We're not just trying to win for our clients. We're trying to obviously help the agents on the other side and their clients get a good deal at the same time. Because remember, all we're trying to do is help somebody buy or sell their house, their home. We're not trying to basically take every penny off the table. We're just trying to actually get it all together. So if you guys have all got the books, or you can just follow along on screen. So yeah, we're basically going to look at some negotiation tips, the most common points of negotiation, walk through the 3 Ps approach to the negotiation process, tactics and counter tactics as well. And this is definitely one of those things that you learn as you're sort of doing more and more deals, as you're getting more and more transactions, is to how to actually stay on top of the deal as well as get that deal done without, you know, basically losing the deal at the same time. So to maximize your learning, we have got some role model videos in class, activities, daily 10-4, etc., etc. So first of all, the mission. Did everybody get the mission from the very last time, like power session number 10, number 9 rather? That was a question, by the way. So therefore there is an answer that's needed. Oh, Tanya missed it. I'm trying to remember actually what was number 9. Let me have a quick look here. See if we got what number 9 was. Make and receive offers. So yeah, basically how to write the offers that are going to win and stuff like that. It's definitely worth, I would say, Tanya, going back over that one. And you can just go onto the Ignite website and actually download that session. Oh, man. So the mission that was meant to be for today, so in other words, the mission number 10, was basically complete the 10-4. Not sure how many people are doing that. So let's have a real honest question here. Who's actually doing the 10-4? Who's filling it in online? See, no one's typing. No one's typing. Oh, Janice, she does most of the time. It's a really good idea just to get into the habit. It takes around about, as we know, Gary Keller, one thing, Jay Papasan, it takes 66 days to form a habit. So, you know, it's probably a really good idea to basically monitor yourself. And there is something that's like a chart that you can put crosses on that basically says that you're on track to do your one thing for 66 days. Oh, Tanya's doing the deal from hell. Yeah, welcome to real estate. They're never always straightforward, that's for sure. But, you know, it's just one of those things that you've got to get into the habit. You know, you have to stick to it. So I would say the quicker you consistently and persistently do that daily 10-4 is a really smart move. Or even just know how many calls you make in a day, how many clients you spoke to in a day. You know, really start tracking the activities, because tracking those activities will help you on a business plan when you get to the business plan in October time, because you need to know how many listing appointments you're going on and how many you're actually converting as well. So it's a really smart move to track these kind of things right from the beginning. Write out notes on the homes that you've previewed and bring those to class. So how's everybody doing with previewing of homes? Is everybody doing that or not? So by the silence, yes, need to do more. While I take clients. Well, yeah, definitely. Whilst you're actually out with clients, if they are looking at homes, then I would consider that a preview, yeah. There's no reason why, if you're already out with clients and you're looking at homes, that's a preview. So definitely do that. Practice scripts with partner. Is anybody doing role-playing and practicing the scripts? Because the one thing we always say is the last thing you want to do is practice on your clients. You want to practice on each other so that when you actually get to clients, you know what to say. Again, I'm not a massive script person, but I do practice with other people just because I still want to be able to know exactly what's going on in terms of different people and certain phrases to make sure I have to put into a conversation. Janice, I practice in my head and out loud. Yeah, you need to practice with somebody else because you need to get the reaction from someone else, Janice. Even if you just do it like, 2 days a week and, you do both at 8:30 a.m., something like that, or even 8:15, just for 15 minutes. It's just a really good idea because, again, the more you practice, the more you actually measure what you're practicing as well, the better you'll get at it. So that's definitely a good idea. So the other thing it said is watch negotiating tactics, which is these kind of little things down here. I wonder if we can zoom in a bit on this. Zoom. There we go. That should be a bit better. So yeah, this bit down here that talks about preparing for the negotiations. Again, this is like a 28-minute video and a 8-minute 25 win-win. So it's probably a good idea to have watched those beforehand. If not, go back and actually watch them again. And then also there's a thing here that talks about get acquainted with common negotiating issues with scripted responses. So go to KW Connect and in the script book, look at negotiating scripts. I would suggest that everybody should probably download that whole script book and start finding somebody. Find someone that you know and like and you can have a bit of a laugh with, and actually practice with this. Just because it's a really smart move. Like I hate practicing on clients and God knows, let's all be honest here, we all do it. Yeah, we shouldn't. The last thing my clients want me to do is to practice things with them. And then in terms of action plan on the previous power session, obviously Tanya, you didn't do that. So yeah, when we look at like the action plan, so we'll look at section 9. Let's see, what was the action plan? Oh, there you go. Identify resources in your market center to review documents before submitting the client. So, I mean, a lot of things about actually making and receiving offers is to know the forms, what's important in the forms, what each of them different ones say and stuff. So that's definitely something that is worth finding out to make sure. And I'm not sure, is everybody, like of the three guys, Janice, Tanya, Wendy, are you all using just .loop or do you even, God forbid, handwrite offers and actually get clients to sign them? So in other words, are you all digital? Yeah, we love, oh, Janice. Yeah, I suppose it does depend on who you actually deal with, yeah. One of the things that is a really smart move, and maybe you've all got it, is on Dropbox or Google Drive or iCloud Drive or, whatever's going on. Have like the standard forms that you actually need in one particular place so that you can always go to that one folder and know that that's where the information you need is. Like I have a folder for buyers and a folder for sellers, and the forms I need are basically all in that. So I have, all the latest forms, and you have to watch out for when new ones come out to actually go and re-download them. But I find that really useful because then you just got one place to go. And then we've obviously grow your database with current contacts. So, hopefully we're all putting more people into our database. Daily 10-4. Oh, what happened then? Oh, there we go, we're back. What happened then? Yeah, it does depend, Janice, whether they're techie or not. I find the people I think who aren't techie are actually the techiest, which is a little bit strange. But again, you kind of look at that situation, and it's always a good idea to make sure that you've got the people. Well, like I say, if you think that they're the least techie, they're actually the ones that live it. And the hardest thing I find is like they're always talking about, well, can we not just both sign on under just our one email address that we've got for the house? I'm like, no, two separate email addresses. So then you actually get your state on trying to get them to basically find another email address and create one. And I think Anne and her team have even actually created email addresses under Gmail for people so that you can actually get them working on Dotloop as well. So here we go. Lead generate for business. So this is going to be interesting. Begin by saying an affirming message out loud. I tune into the needs of those I'm calling and find solutions that work. So the first thing that we want to do is basically get us into that mentality of basically calling our contacts. So that's where we are now. We're looking at, get on the phone, get your list of contacts, and basically call for 20 minutes and contact as many people as physically possible. Always ask for referrals from each contact and make sure that you're offering up your KW app. Now, I think there's been a few issues with this KW app recently in terms of showing the results and stuff. But then, at least they've got the app, which is branded for you. And then the next thing then is to obviously secure an appointment. So I'll let you guys decide. Do you want to basically go through the calling, or do you want to try and get through the actual session? And then I'll just basically believe you that you're actually going to do that 20 minutes of lead generation after the event. So it's your choice. Vote now. I'm going to take a sip of water. My voice is dying rapidly. All right, do it at the end. Let's carry on. Okay. So looking at page number 9, get your head into the game. So you can't buy or sell a house without negotiation. And a lot of what we bring to the table as agents is that kind of unemotional, unattached situation where, we can actually be, for want of a better word, impartial to actually the results of the negotiation, of the offer and everything. So yes, it's a pivotal point, and we all, and I'm sure, like if you count the amount of deals that you've written, and then you've either just not had it accepted, or you found that for whatever reason you just couldn't get the deal to come together, and that's definitely it's fairly common within this business. But the whole point is to kind of work with the buyers and the sellers to try and say, look, let's never dismiss the option from the start. Let's always look at negotiation points, So negotiation is a pivotal point, and it can happen twice, during the offer and then during that, what they're calling the option period, but we're calling the buyer due diligence side, because there's not only getting that offer agreed to start off with, it's then, right, okay, we had the inspection, the septic, the well, the water, the power bills, all that kind of stuff. And that can in itself be a negotiation, because, we know that in that state, you can actually end up renegotiating the offer as well. So you've got two lots of negotiations to do. And it is one of those situations that, there's never a good way when a deal falls through. Now, here it says, do not let a deal fall through, which would be great. However, there are times when you have no choice, that, we actually have to let that deal die. So making it happen, negotiation. So as it says here, we're almost always negotiating. If you're married, if you have a boyfriend, a partner, a girlfriend, if you have kids, you are 100% negotiating all the time. It's a question of trying to get things to work your way. And it comes through negotiations. It's about a little bit of give, a little bit of take, to see, what we can actually do to get that deal done and actually negotiating. So negotiation, what is it? It's a bargaining process between two or more parties, each with its own aims, needs and viewpoints, seeking to discover common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or resolve a conflict. So for us, it's about negotiations between basically the buyer and the listing agent, who are representing the buyers and the sellers at the other side. And that's why you can see this one here, it becomes a little bit easier negotiation here. If you put the buyer and the seller in a room and try to get them on their own to negotiate, that would probably not be a good state at all. So here we go. Watch the video negotiating. So I'm going to go and find this negotiating video. Oh, Taylor's arrived. Right over there. Negotiations. Here we go. Oh, there it is. Okay, so negotiations.
Hi, I'm Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. I think there's a lot of skills that go in.
All right, let's try it again.
Hi, I'm Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. 2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in volume. I grew up on a farm, so I've always seen my dad negotiating land and cows and horses. Being the youngest of four, I'm trading and negotiating with others, all growing up. So I've kind of done it all the time. Some people are certainly gravitate toward it and are naturally better at it than others. But I think that negotiation can definitely be learned. I think there's a lot of skills that go into being a great negotiator. I think it's learning your client. Instead of kind of assuming that you know what's important to them, really asking a lot of questions and letting them tell you what they need or want, and then speaking to the other agent and finding out what's most important to their client. And there's some agents that just don't give any. When I have an agent that I'm dealing with that's very tight-lipped, I just keep asking questions, and they give me information that they might not have otherwise given, whether it's a divorce or a death, or it's just they got relocated to some other city. And I think if you're really listening and being intentional and purposeful about listening, you'll find out exactly what's important to them or what they have to have. In certain situations, you have to be creative. We're always looking for that next little tip to help our clients out and win the deals. One of the techniques that we've used a lot that's worked well for us is the escalation clause. For example, if the property is listed at $250,000, we might go in at $250,000 with strong terms, and in special stipulations we might put in there that we're willing to beat the next best documented offer by $1,000 up to $263,000. And the best offer might be $261,000, so we end up getting it for $262,000. From a client standpoint, be willing to have a real conversation with your clients. It's not us just being realtors for them, it's us consulting and advising and really telling them, if you really want this property, here's what you have to do to get it. Everybody's got a different way of how they would negotiate. And networking with other Keller Williams agents around the country, the more you hear, the more ideas you get. And then you end up gearing it towards you and what you think is going to work best for you and your clients. A lot of it comes down to experience, and I think the more deals you do, the more comfortable you get with it. If you can step back from every transaction and learn something, you're going to get really good over time.
There we go. close that down. So ahas on that. So in other words, what did you take away from that? That, you know, he obviously said, Josh Anderson, that he said that really resonated with you, that you were like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You need to remember those things. Type away in that chat box. Know your clients. Ask a lot of questions, definitely. That's one of those things that you know, as soon as you meet them, from a selling or from a buying point of view, that's kind of the first thing, is to ask lots and lots of questions. Really, like, dig deep, because it's going to do two things for you. Number one, it's going to build more rapport so that you know more about what's going on in their lives and they feel like you care about them because you're interested. It also helps with a lot of other people as well, you know, all people that you meet, because, you know, the more you know about them, the better your relationship will be with them. Yeah, Johnny says ask the other agent a lot of questions. Yeah, it's always interesting, to try and find a way to use your skills and abilities to actually get them to basically give you the information you need. And sometimes they'll say not at liberty to say, because, you know, they're protecting their client, and that's fine. But, you know, if you're trying to get a win-win deal, then, you know, there definitely are some things that I don't see any reason why we couldn't be talking to the other agent about, because we're just trying to get, like I say, a win-win deal here, to get one client to sell and one client to buy. So definitely. Um, you know, one of the other things that I think we picked up in there as well is being creative to close the deal. So, you know, we all know that it's not always about the money, especially when you start looking at, you know, this certain X $1,000s you're apart from a buyer and a seller is always a good one, because, you know, people are focusing on the $5,000 difference. It's like, well, you know, don't focus on the $5,000 difference. That's only going to be $2 a month on your mortgage payment. So, you know, and that's when you can get into a very interesting conversation like, look, are we willing to not buy the house that you really, really like because of a $2 a month increase in your mortgage payment? So that can be kind of powerful as well. Okay, so moving on to the next page then, negotiating tips. So be professional. You know, there's no other excuse for us not being professional. You know, we get paid, let's admit it, fairly well for the skills and the expertise we have. So, you know, be professional in everything. Don't be emotional is another one that's not really on here, but I would definitely say is a good idea. So your goal is always just to get the signed contract. You know, you have to basically get to that situation and then manage expectations from there on in. So it's always an interesting one to make sure that, you know, you've got to be professional and get that signed contract. And then again, you know, refer back to the motivation. That could be another one as well, where you're talking to the people on the other side, to find out their motivation. You know, maybe your client can do a longer closing, if you're on the buyer side, or even maybe the buyer, and you're the seller, the buyer wants to get in really, really quickly, and therefore he's prepared to give you a better price. You know, if you know the motivation of your clients, then great, you can negotiate much better on that. Excuse me. Don't reveal too much. Again, you know, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And don't, you know, keep your client's motivation close to your chest, but remember what that motivation is to help you negotiate a strong point. And then here's the biggest one. You know, don't be attached to the outcome. You know, it's always a interesting situation when you can't be attached to what's going to happen at the end of it. You know, there's hundreds or thousands of transactions, and you're not going to get them to win every time. So, you know, if your deal doesn't work, then just say next and just move on. Keep your opinions and emotions out of it. You're just a facilitator of a transaction for your client. Excuse me. So, common points of negotiation. Price is always the big factor. But, I always say that when we're writing an offer with a client, we always focus on two things, the price and the terms. Now, we're good negotiators, but it's very rare that we will get the price we want and all the terms that we want. Sometimes, it has actually happened, and maybe you can answer in that chat box as well. Have you ever submitted an offer where the price and the terms were perfect, and therefore there was no negotiation? You sent the offer and just got accepted. So has that ever happened to anybody on the chat? Janice, no. No. Oh, Wendy, yes. So was that you submitting an offer, Wendy? So tell us a little bit more in that chat box then. So you basically offered up a price, terms, and they just signed it straight back and said, agreed?
How about if I use the mic? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's easier.
Can you hear me, Richard?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm trying to think of the specific deal. I know it's happened a couple times, but I believe that there was verbal communication first.
Right.
And I know that a verbal is certainly not a contract. However, there's some instances where it comes in pretty handy, and it's just the circumstances of both the buyer and the seller when you know you have a willing seller and a willing buyer, just with the communication with the agent that you're involved with, then you can work it out so that you're not doing counter offers and such. And it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes you have another agent that you're really on the same page and everybody's on the same page. Excuse me, and that's why it works out so smoothly.
Yeah, so on that one then you actually did a little bit of negotiation with the other agent first so that you knew when you sent the offer in you were going to be okay.
Yes, yes.
Got it. Yeah, and that's certainly something that, can happen. I'm sure that if Anne De Silva was here, she'd slap our wrists and say, verbal negotiations with no paperwork is not a good move. But, we're all about getting business done, so I wouldn't necessarily stress too much about that. So yeah, these are all some of the different things in the terms. We know that there's, when are we actually closing on the deal? When's the deposit due? When's the building inspection? When have I got to have all the bills and receipts and running costs of the house by? There's a whole raft of stuff that is there to be done. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this, the 3 Ps approach. So the 3 Ps is basically negotiating and learning because, yes, some people are born negotiators and other people, we actually have to work at it. It's not something that's in our genetic makeup. So, this is basically saying, giving you a strategy, a 3 Ps to actually getting negotiation techniques. So the first one is preparation. So it's the key to building the confidence and getting a smooth transaction. So again, like, we look at this one here, you got to know your client, and know when they're willing to basically bend a little bit, negotiate, and where they're going to absolutely dig their heels in and say, no, like this is where we've got to actually stand firm. Again, know your goal. So remind everybody as to why we're buying or selling a house. And once you know your clients, you can kind of keep coming back to that, especially if it's getting a little bit tense with the negotiation process. You want to keep bringing them back to like, look, let's go back to the goal here and what we're trying to achieve. Think ahead. So this is what Wendy was talking about, a little bit of, tactical phone calls maybe, when you can actually anticipate what the other person wants, and basically almost strategize how you're going to get to a point where you think it's all going to work. Wendy did some of this ahead of the time anyway, so she knew that there wasn't this like, oh, cross this out, strike this out, send a counter, cross this, change that, reinitials. and you end up with some very interesting paperwork to actually get it to work through. Set out clear expectations. So yeah, you want to make sure that we're not over promising and under delivering. You want to do the other way. You want to under promise and over deliver. So especially when you're talking about price and everything else, it gets fairly emotional. So make sure that you're not promising too much. Otherwise, it just ends up with somebody basically being a win-lose instead of a win-win deal. Be informed. So before making an offer or counter-offer, it's a good idea to speak with two other salespeoples. So I'm guessing this is not talking about the other agent. This is actually talking about other salespeople. Well, no, actually, it's talking here about the other party and their sales representative. And sometimes as well, you might know that other agent fairly well because maybe you've done a couple of deals with them. So you get a feel for how they're going to react to everything. Obey the laws. Yeah, can't break the laws. We all know what happens when that goes wrong. It's not a pretty picture. And then know your documents. So again, the more offers that you've written, the more contracts that you've written, the more deals you've been involved with, then the more familiar you will be with using those forms. So here we go. Our turn. Prepare to negotiate. So we have to read the scenario below, identify the key areas in which more information is needed, and then 3 specific questions you would ask your client in the space provided below. So one of the things here, like I say, it'd be a lot easier if everybody was actually in the office today, but we've got nobody in the office. So here we're representing a single buyer, renting her current property, and she's looking for us to guide her through the process. She really loves the house for 175, but there's a bit of a roof issue. It's listed as is and is correctly priced. Your client would like to keep her payments as low as possible as she's still got student loans to pay off, so she wants a 155 offer. And there's been quite an activity on the listing. So 3 questions that we would like to ask that client. It says obviously put them in the space below. This is a bit of an activity thing for 15 minutes. So, maybe if we just write the questions in the chat box, once we hit like 3 or 6 different questions, because everybody have different questions to ask. So just go ahead and actually put them in that chat box, and let's see what we come up with. So yeah, definitely, what are you paying in rent at the moment? But also think about the fact that, if that roof is listed as is, and she wants to pay 155, one of the questions I'd certainly be asking is, has she got the funds to basically repair the roof if necessary? There you go, Wendy. Do you have any money set aside too? And I'm guessing the rest of it's coming soon, which is basically to repair that roof. Okay, so that's 2 questions. Is the money set aside? What are you paying in rent? One of the other questions I'd be asking her as well is when can she actually finish renting her property? She might be tied into a 3-month notice period. One of the other things maybe to think about as well is if the seller offers to fix the roof, don't forget one of the things in here, it says the house appears to have evidence of roof leak, is listed as is, and is correctly priced for $175. So maybe one of the options would be, would she feel, how would she feel about making an offer closer to $175 with an offer in there that the seller has to fix the roof. So in other words, offer comes back at full price to fix the roof, is one of the options for her maybe. Another thing as well is, why does she like this house so much? So, there's quite a few different questions that we could ask her on that. So let's move on. So the next one that we have to do out of the 3 Ps is to present the offer. So, there's no way on earth that we would ever send an offer to another agent without calling them and letting them know that there's an offer coming through. Especially, I would always do that first. Now, there's always a good timeline. I would make sure my offer is all signed up and ready to go before ringing them. I wouldn't necessarily ring them and say it's on its way, because then you're just basically get this person sitting there waiting for it to arrive. So I would say it's all signed and it's coming through shortly. And again, one of the things we can do in .loop is actually put them into the loop so they can see as well. Now, if all you've done is phoned them, then it's hard to do this one. But if you're actually meeting them face to face, then obviously there's non-verbal communication that could come into place as well. And then if you're on the phone, then yes, you've got to pay really good attention on listening. And then once you've sent the offer, shut up, basically, be quiet, and see exactly what's happened, because silence is a very powerful negotiating tactic, especially when you've presented that offer already, to say, this is the price, these are the conditions, what do you think? And just wait and just let's listen and see what basically they come down with, because depending on how quickly they come back to you, will give you some communication strategies, some clues as to what's going on. And then again, this one here says, once you actually presented the offer, listen carefully to what's important to the other party. So if they start saying, oh man, there's just no way my client's going to go for that close date, write down, close date's important. And everything else, it doesn't always come down to the price. It sometimes comes down more to the terms and conditions. Stay calm. Don't be emotional. I've had quite a few negotiating deals over the last 4 years where the agent on the other side has got fairly emotional with what he's been saying. That's just one of those things. If they want to get emotional and all stressed and everything, then great. It doesn't do you any favors by being emotional. Focus on your customers' needs, your clients' needs, and then give your offer the best chance. It's very important to make sure that the way you present it is basically a win-win deal. Don't ever go into presenting an offer if you don't believe that it's a good deal, because that will come across for definite. It just won't help your situation or your client if you don't believe that the offer that you're sending over is actually a good offer. So here we go, our turn. Non-verbal cues. So back to that chat box. Write down as many non-verbal cues that we can that would suggest the negotiation is either going in a positive or a negative direction. And this is both on the phone or face-to-face. So if you want to take 10 minutes just to actually, write down, type in the text box exactly what the positive on a face-to-face or on the phone, non-verbal or verbal cues would be when you're actually presenting an offer. whilst you guys go do that, I'm going to mute myself and go and grab some more water. Okay, how are we doing then? So Wendy says positive face-to-face is basically smiles, head nodding, pen in the hand, ready to sign. Yeah, it's always a really nice positive one. Janice says eye contact, leaning forward, arms crossed, increased rate of speech, facial expressions, eyebrows raised, smiling, smirking, flat tone of voice, defensive. So yeah, she's got, you know, certainly on the face-to-face, you've got positive and negatives. So think about on the phone. On the phone's a lot more difficult to actually figure out, you know, what's the positive and what's the negative on the phone. But some of the ideas, you know, to give you an idea, definitely what Janet had when you talking about monotone, flat voice, or even a, you know, a slowed down rate of speech could definitely be something as well to actually think about. You know, it's not just the increased rate of speech, it's what happens when they're slowing down. That's the negative. If they're taking a long time to think and speech is really slow, then it usually means they're thinking very carefully about the words that they're saying, which is not necessarily a good thing. When they're positive, varied tones, swift pace of speech, upbeat and emphatic, yeah, that's the word, is another good one there. So yeah, you know, when they're on the phone, they're excited, they're asking questions from Wendy, asking how the buyer seller would perceive their offer. So yeah, there's some all good stuff in there, especially on the non-verbal side of it. So moving on to basically identifying tactics and counter-tactics. Agents will use certain methods to manipulate the negotiation to actually, you know, get it to where they want their negotiation to be. And, you know, it's always a good idea to be aware of what some of these tactics are. And yes, you know, you can even identify some of them so you know where they're being used, but also you can have a counter tactic, so to speak. So let's have a quick look at these and let's think about what the counter tactic could be to some of these as well. So first tactic is called nibbling. So once your client has agreed upon one major concession, then the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions. So what do you think a counter tactic could be to stop that from happening? So this is that whole like, well, yeah, actually, you know, we've agreed to a, you know, $25,000 septic field installation. And then all of a sudden you say, well, yeah, you know, and we'd really like to have this and we'd really like to have that. And, you know, it's no real big deal if you guys could just, you know, agree to putting this in as well. So what's a counter tactic against that? Any ideas? Nobody any ideas?
Hey, Richard.
Wendy.
I'm thinking that to counter that, if, say, we're representing a buyer and putting in an offer, I think, excuse me, we're representing the buyer. I think that if we're really clear right from the get-go, instead of the nibbling, like submit the offer and say we will offer, say, 500,000, and based on the inclusions of, I don't know, whether it's the appliances or the closing date, the stickler or whatever, just to say it all at once as opposed to making one change.
Yep. That's definitely one way of dealing with it, is to say this is everything. And you want to talk about everything like from the start. But one of the other ways that you could stop it from happening is when you give up the 20, you know, like take an example, the $25,000 septic system, and you give one up. At the same time, go back, if you're the seller agent, go back to the buyer and say, but in return for that, we'd obviously like to have, you know, the closing date brought forward by a couple of weeks. So basically, do what they call nibble back. You know, at the same time, you've given up a fairly big concession, then ask for something back. No reason why, if they agree that they're going to get that big reduction or installation of the roof or something like that, that you shouldn't say, yeah, but you know, we'll need a quicker closing date. Tactic, hot potato. The other party tries to pass the problem onto you. So for example, a cooperative sales agent tries to pass all the day of completion costs onto your client because their client can't afford them. So what's a counter tactic when somebody does that? Wendy's unmuted
Richard,
herself.
I just experienced this, Richard, and I did not get the price for the house I had listed that I wanted. The other agent, he was representing his buyer, and he was going to walk if everything wasn't included. It was not a pretty sight, and it was one of the more difficult. I had a very motivated buyer. No, I'm sorry, a very motivated seller, and he did not have a real motivated buyer.
Yeah.
So he asked for the world, and he got it. My people gave it to him.
Wow.
And I know it was not a fun transaction. However, once again, the sellers were very motivated. Some circumstances in their lives that they definitely had to sell.
Yeah.
And the buyer just kept saying that, well, they're going to walk if you don't do that. They've got their other house chosen and
yeah.
all that. Yeah.
And for your situation, it was probably hard to do. But one of the options when somebody says, well, look, you've got to pay for all the closing day costs, so you've got to pay for everything, is test the validity of when they throw that hot potato at you, to basically say, throw it back at them, to say, look, have they really gone to all of the closing day costs? Because if your client can't afford those, how are they going to pay the mortgage? How are they going to actually buy the house and live if they can't pay closing day costs? So in this particular situation, what they're suggesting is, has every possible option been exhausted by the people on the other side? And that's always one of those things that, from your situation, Wednesday, probably wasn't even an option because, basically you've got very motivated sellers. If they've got a buyer that's playing that game of, well, it was between you and one other one, and we can just go and buy the other one. You can't really call his bluff and say, okay, go on then.
That makes me feel a little better that you say that, Richard.
Well, it's hard because your sellers, your motivation and how you knew your sellers basically stopped you from, no offense, but your hands were tied. You had no negotiating ability.
So this was quite interesting. I don't mean to get off topic, but the first time the furnace came to the realization that it was too old, insurance would not take care of it for the buyer. So it was up to the seller to have to do something about this.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And the seller could not afford it. They got Irving in to give an estimate and such, but Irving would not provide the seller with having it done because they had some bad credit. And anyway, we contacted the lawyer, and the lawyer put out a letter to Irving saying, you will be first paid at closing. So that was the first experience I had with that. So anyway, that's just an option out there.
Yeah.
For people claiming that they can't afford things and to close, and that's how it was done.
Yeah, and especially if lawyers giving instruction to whoever's doing the work that they will be first paid, gives a lot of weight to that. The key thing then is to make sure that there's enough money from the sale of the house to pay for everything that's involved anyway. So long as the lawyer's done his due diligence and has figured out, exactly sale price minus commission minus furnace repair minus mortgage minus lawyer fees equals still money left, then that can work for definite. So that's how you deal with the hot potato, is test that validity and throw it right back at them. So here's the good tactic: good guy, bad guy. So two people working together will take on opposite roles. So this is the good cop, bad cop type of thing. When one person starts friendly and the other is difficult or aggressive. So it's, a typical car salesman who says that his car manager won't let him reduce the price any further. So yeah, it's a typical good guy, good cop, bad cop situation. So how would we counter tactic that? Now, I've never come across this tactic either at the moment. Does anybody else come across this one? Wendy, you come across everything.
Are you referring to, okay, say husband and wife, the husband is being very grouchy about everything and the wife is being positive as buyers? Is
It
that
can
what
be
you're
that,
referring to
yes.
here?
It could be that.
Well, what I think most of us know that the wife usually wins out on these things.
Yep.
I know that certainly is a generalization, but I find that it's usually the woman that rules, and if she's not happy, the husband generally concedes to make her happy.
Yeah. And that's usually the way with most negotiations where it's a husband and a wife, is that, the husband is basically doing whatever he can just to keep his wife happy. Happy wife equals happy life. Like, cheers, let's be honest about it. It is true. Very true. So, one of the other ways to deal with that whole good cop, bad cop is to even call them on the game. You could even say, oh, come on, you're not really going to play good cop, bad cop, are you? And then if it does continue, then attribute what the bad guy says to the good guy, since they're a tag team anyway. Because then you're going to end up with, basically you got two bad guys or two bad cops going on in there as well. So, it's always just interesting to try and figure out how you're being negotiated against, especially in this situation. So let's have a look at the third P, which is position. So positioning is basically moving everybody closer to each other. So that's when you get full agreement. So some of the tactics here, you acknowledge and affirm the common ground. So in other words, when they're in agreement and they're in the same position, just basically identify both those positions and find out which ones are immovable and which ones aren't. So who's in stone and who's not in stone. And then ask more what and how questions to understand the party's values and why certain things are important. So for instance, one of the things down here, it says, you have a seller who wants to close in 30 days. The buyer wants to close in 60. So this is where you'd say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're requesting a 30-day day of completion. So what's important about completing in those 30 days? And then if your client becomes defensive, you'd say, listen, my goal is to let the buyer know why that's important to you. So if they say, well, we've got to be out in 30 days because, there's a train ride across Canada or there's a plane that we've got to get on or something like that, at least if you know the real reason, you're not being such a hard-nosed negotiator saying, well, you want 30 days. It's like, no, we need 30 days because, and then at least there's a sensible reasoning why. And what might happen here is that you might find that 30-day completion isn't sensible. And then you can actually, kind of talk to your client at the same time and say, well, is that really a reasonable expectation for someone to close in 30 days for that particular reason? And sometimes when they kind of listen to you saying it, they might be like, well, actually, no, that doesn't make sense. So understand what's important allows you to prioritize and address their issues. And it's a process. Sometimes you're toing and froing. And, I'm sure we've all had those days where you're kind of on the phone non-stop from actually having an offer and then going back and negotiating something and then getting a counter offer back and then talk to your clients and adjusting it again and just spend a lot of time on the phone trying to get to a point where the counter offer is actually acceptable. And then here's the good one. Know when to walk away. Sometimes there'll come a time when you just go, this is just not going to work. And it doesn't matter what you're doing Doesn't matter how you're trying to negotiate to keep the whole thing together. You have to just basically walk away from, basically instead of a win-win deal, a win-lose deal. And you never know what it's going to be that's going to break that, the straw that breaks the camel's back. But there will come a time, and at that stage, you just have to basically say, listen, we've done the best we could. We can't do any more. Therefore, our easiest option here is to just walk away. So positioning. So this is a little bit of a role play situation. So we can't do it because unless you're all going to somehow magically web camera each other, you're not going to be able to role play this one. But this is definitely something that would be worth practicing at some stage, maybe when people are actually in the office, or if you've got maybe you have an 8 o'clock meeting, breakfast meeting with one of you, so you can actually just practice some of this stuff. So this one basically says one's going to be the buyer and the other is going to be the seller representatives. Look at the scenario and then take 1 to 2 minutes to prepare, and then present to your practice partner and basically do some positioning. So the idea here is that there's a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, $350,000 house. Needs new carpeting on the first floor and a garage door opener. 3 offers made, all below asking price. So the buyer side, you're going to write 340, pre-approved, shortest time possible since they're moving from out of state, need a home for the family. They're leaving their appliances, so they want all of those included as well. So that's the buyer side of it. From a seller side, your sellers have raised the family in the house that they're selling, and they've got a lot of friends there. Kids are grown, they don't need the amount of space, and also they've already purchased a home in Florida. But appliances are going to the daughter, who's gone through a divorce. They won't be moving until they've sold this house, but they want to get to Florida as soon as possible, and they're ready to stand their ground regarding the price. So this is where you'd basically practice from a buyer point of view what they want, from a seller point of view, and how you try and basically position to get commonality between what people would and wouldn't do. So that's one of the things that we should practice when there's more people here. Seeing there's only Lynn in the room with me now, it's probably not a good stage for us to do it. So then the other option is now to basically turn it back into another situation where it's counter offering. So not only can we be presenting the offer, which is this first one here that we can see on the screen, but then what you could also do is you're also going to get into negotiating counter offers. So this one basically says find a different person, take a few minutes to look at the role play, and then practice the next stage. So this one, the buyer has found the house they love, it's in the neighborhood they want, but it's at the top of the price range and needs work doing to the kitchen and the master bed. Client makes the offer, and the seller says, I must warn you, we've had several offers and yours is pretty low. From a seller point of view, they need to move within 45 days. You feel that you've priced it competitively. You know the house needs updating, but the sellers don't see the need because they said it was just fine for them. There have been multiple offers. Other offers are still standing, but the timing won't work for the seller. And the latest offer is lower than the asking price. You've let the buyer's sales representative know that, same as above, must warn you, we've got several offers and your offer is pretty low. So again, this would be a really good one for people if they're actually in the office, because you can practice negotiating with each other, as opposed to actually practicing negotiations in real life when it's never a good stage, because when you do that, you're practicing real life and you could get into that situation where it's actually fairly crucial and there's a whole lot more stress. So, once you actually have these kind of situations in hand, you can basically do this a lot easier by doing these kind of practice negotiations in an office with other agents who are prepared to practice with you as well. So again, that would be about another 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes. So we're basically in only an hour, we've covered most of the information on here because, again, these things take a lot longer when people are actually in the classroom. You know, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you know, we can't do the role play, we can't do the practice, we can't discuss the differences that's going on. So here's the action plan. So again, attend negotiation training. Go back and actually look at some of those DVDs, the videos, especially the longer ones that talk about negotiations. Practice with a partner and the scripts, and then prepare for the next class, which is going to be on Wednesday, with the pre-work that's actually necessary. So here's mission 11. So it's the same things at the top. It's that daily 10-4, write some handwritten notes, get ready to report it, note cards, you know, business cards and stamps for doing those handwritten notes. Practice scripts with a partner, definitely really, really important. And then prepare for contract to close. So interview one or two other agents in the market center and ask them about their contract to close, best tips. You know, maybe they've got a flow chart, maybe they've got timelines, you know, anything that they've basically got that can help you with, okay, we've got the offer agreed, now what have we got to do? Complete the action plan, and then again, add people to your database. So what's this thing here? Oh, this is just some points of recall here, some ahas. Enhance your learning. Go to the blog. So here's some of the scripts as well that you talk about, you know, handling the buyer's request for inclusion of the personal items. You know, especially when you're negotiating a deal, some of the things you're asking for, you know, you don't know what's been promised to other people. You don't know how important some of those items are. You know, I've had clients definitely that categorically have said, no, they're not having that. We've had that for like 55 years. It's coming with us. There's no way we're leaving that. It's important and it's part of the family. So, you know, you will have situations like that. Inspection reports, always good to actually focus through the big stuff on that and not necessarily worry about the small stuff. The inspectors will show everything. But again, you've got to make sure that you're focusing on the big items within that inspection report. There you go. When your buyer wants to sell to make non-essential repairs. So again, you know, in some situations, the sellers will just say yes, whatever, just go ahead and do them all. More often than not, though, what you really want is to focus just on the big stuff. Here we go. Recommend your seller counters a low offer. Always. In our market right now, you know, I always say to clients, never ever just flat out reject any offer you get. Remember, it's just a starting point. What's more important is where we finish, not where we start. So this is where you prepare your sellers to negotiate high-cost repairs. So there's nothing worse than finding out something that's going to cost more than, you know, probably high cost would be like more than $2,000, more than $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to repair. And, you know, it gets pretty emotional very quickly. So, you know, it's always a good idea to talk to them and prepare for those repairs, especially at the cost that they're actually at. And then here's this counsel your seller. So there's some good scripts at the back of this that's probably worth as well. But apart from that, that is it. So any ahas, any questions? Janice, I'll leave one of these in your mailbox. Yes, definitely. We can do that. Yeah, we've got like hard copies of all of these here in the office. So if anybody wants them, I'll put one in Janice's mailbox now, but certainly if you do need any, they've all been printed out. So if you just have a chat to Erin, she can probably keep one of the copies for you. So any other questions from anybody? Speak quickly or forever hold your peace because my voice is going. Yeah, exactly, Janice. Negotiation is crucial. Yeah, if you can't negotiate a good deal, then, you know, it becomes very difficult for the sellers or the buyers to basically feel like they've had a good transaction, and that's what you want. It's all about making sure that your client gets what they want within reason. So long as you can actually get to the stage where they, get the keys on closing day and they feel happy and they feel excited they're moving into the new house, or that they've sold their house and moving on to the next chapter of their lives, great, because that's where you get the 5-star reviews on Facebook. Yeah, it isn't where we start, but it's where we finish, always. Okay, no other questions? In that case, we are done. So, you're done nice and early, 10:28. No excuse why you can't go and do an hour and a half of phone calls, contacts, handwritten notes, and get some deals working. So, next session is going to be on Wednesday. Not sure who's doing it, but from the sound of my voice, it will not be me. So, have a good day, work hard, get some deals done.